Before that takes place, Mitt Romney is reigniting his public feud with President Trump. He's written a scathing Washington Post op-ed writing, "The appointment of senior persons of lesser experience, the abandonment of allies who fight beside us, and the president's thoughtless claim that America has long been a, quote, sucker in world affairs, all defined his presidency down." Romney goes on to say, "With a nation so divided, resentful, and angry, presidential leadership in qualities of character is indispensable. And it is in this province where the incumbent's shortfall has been most glaring." Well, President Trump firing back this morning on Twitter, writing in part, "Here we go with Mitt Romney, but so fast. Question, is he a flake? He should be happy for all Republicans. Be a team player and win." Joining me now is MSNBC political analyst Mike Murphy. Well, I kind of screwed up that quote, but you saw it on the screen. Former senior advisor to Mitt Romney, Jeb Bush, and John McCain. First of all, are you at all surprised that Mitt Romney, with overwhelming support in his home state of Utah, is taking this new maverick shift going into the Senate?
No, not really. I mean, I think he's spot on. It's true, and it is consistent. He has been one of the few people in the Republican Party who's been brave enough to call out the president on his misbehavior. And he published an op-ed at the beginning of his Senate campaign in the Salt Lake City Tribune that made a lot of the same arguments. So I think he's putting a marker of consistency down. Now that he's entering the Senate, there's so much interest in what he's going to do. I think he wanted to frame it. But it's important. I think people should read the whole article. He also said, "I'm not going to be the day-to-day commenter on every Trump tweet or thing. I'm going to have these principles as I deal with the president." And I think that's appropriate and consistent with who he is.
Now, are some of us completely out of line to think, whoa, we've lost the whole Republican Senate has lost Bob Corker, they've lost Jeff Flake, Lamar Alexander is now a lame duck, if you will, not running for re-election, but in the current Senate, there are so few Republican critics willing to stand up. And here you have Mitt Romney, who agrees with the president on a lot of issues on domestic policy, but disagrees with his character, with his demeanor, with his approach, to public life in general. Is this the opening round of a potential 2020 run?
I don't think so. I mean, I publicly said I think Mitt Romney ought to be president, and I'd love to see him run. But that's not what this is about. This is about Mitt putting down a marker. I think what's interesting, though, is as somebody who's been brave enough in the past to call out the president on his misbehavior, and when, frankly, he acts against our national interest, Mitt sounds publicly like a lot of senators I've heard privately. So, I think there's more of that feeling there, and they wish the president would grow up a little bit. And there's that concern, the loss of General Mattis over an incredibly important moment in our foreign policy where all of a sudden we've gotten ad hoc and dangerous and ignoring experienced national security people and the long-term strategy we've had is serious stuff. So I think, what Mitt's doing is preemptively, before he gets there, putting down a marker of how he's going to do this stuff. Support the policy that's good and gets things done, but not be afraid when the president works against either the values of the party or the interest of the country to call him out on it. So I think he ought to be applauded, and I think a lot of senators are quietly kind of nodding agreement, frankly.
I'm sure as well, because we all talk to them off camera, and they're all very critical of the president, but very uncomfortable. And a lot of them, frankly, are worried about primary challenges in 19 and 20, this year and 20. You've got Susan Collins, you've got Lindsey Graham. People who are running for re-election are less likely to be completely independent. And here you've got Mitt Romney, a national figure, coming in with 6 years to play around with and uniquely supported in his home state.
Yeah, he's got a real base there. And Utah's interesting. It's not only the most Republican state, it's a state that on the moral dimension has always had doubts about the president who's underperformed there. A protest Republican got about 20% of the vote against Trump when he ran for president. So I think Mitt is speaking not only for himself, but for a lot of his constituents. But I think he's also going to try to make his main priority getting things done and passing Republican agenda, working in a bipartisan manner when it makes sense and the policy is right. So I think one of the things this op-ed is really about is not a Johnny one-note thing on Trump. I think he's putting that marker down, but he also talked a lot about the policies that he thinks the country ought to follow, and I think he'll be fighting for those every day, and I think others will be with him.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Mike Murphy. I really appreciate your insights. Welcome to Washington, Mitt Romney.
Sure, thank you.
And coming up, freshman in class. Speaking of welcomes, the new lawmaker is arriving on the Hill, facing a government shutdown and a battle over the border wall. New York Democrat Max Rose from New York, from Staten Island, joins me next, right here on Andrea Mitchell Reports on MSNBC.